Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Balatro. For those not across it, I do reviews and overviews, overviews being where I take a look at the first 2 hours of a game and render a bit of a soft verdict. Steam reckons that that's a refund window that's big enough for you to make up your mind, and I kind of agree, being that if you don't like a game after 2 hours, chances are you don't like it after 20. It also helps me triage what I will and won't review going forward. All in all, it's a good system that's serving me well, shouting out all sorts of games whether they get the review treatment or not. I mean, look, it's definitely up for review. Just to be clear, this was a great time. I pretty much did it in one sitting and just hoovered it up. I had to keep an eye on a clock to make sure I didn't go on too long. So yes, it has the addicting just one more go quality of a good roguelike. I should probably explain what it is. It is, in fact, a roguelike deck builder type game, which I get burnt out with them, to be honest. Of all the roguelike genres, they're the ones that sort of, for me, they're going the way of World War II video games and zombie video games. I feel, especially as like an indie enthusiast, that they're getting a little bit played out in the market. So I would argue that would make the praise sit a bit higher, that this game actually managed to really get its claws into me. The other thing, I reckon your mileage is going to vary depending on how you feel about just card games. I bring it up because I'm actually not someone that really cares much for, your 52 deck traditional card game. I don't really see a huge appeal, at least in these years of my life, in something like solitaire. Like, to me, that seems a bit boring. And while I, got on board the poker hype back, a couple of decades ago or whatever it is, when all of a sudden everyone wanted to play Texas Hold'em, it never really grabbed me like maybe it grabbed some people. But I'm also quite aware that there is a lot of people on the other side of it, that they really do have a big appeal, a big draw to this sort of stuff, to blackjack, that sort of thing. So if you find yourself really enjoying those sort of, whatever you would call them, parlor games or card games, you might really love this. But even though I'm lukewarm on, traditional card deck games, I really, really liked it and what they were doing here. So, take that with the grain that it deserves to be. Essentially what you're doing is you start with a 52 card deck. I believe it. Geez, I think it is. Let's just go with that. You're just starting with a normal playing deck as your roguelike deck. And you're essentially trying to play 5 cards from a hand of, I don't know, it might be 7, but it changes. Like, because it's a roguelite, you can increase or decrease your hand size. But essentially you're trying to play the best hand possible and generate a poker hand. So anything from, like 2 pair or a pair, I guess. High card actually would be the lowest, all the way up to things like royal flushes, for example. And there's a whole score system. There's a multiplier system as well. And all of this can be tweaked by upgrades throughout the run. So you can get these sort of expendable, consumable planet cards in booster packs that will change the value of maybe like a 2 pair. And maybe you could level it up a couple of times to the point where you're getting like a 6-time multiplier when you play a 2 pair. And therein, you develop your deck building strategies as you add and remove cards. And it's not just straight up playing cards and face cards. It's all sorts of wild and weird stuff. You'll get ones where, like, if you hold it in your hand at the end of the round, you'll get extra points. If you play it, you get extra points and multipliers, that sort of stuff. You've got glass cards that have a chance of breaking. So you like twist and augment and upgrade and tweak. At a certain point, the poker cards, the 52 card deck thing is sort of an aesthetic gimmick, but also the scoring and play system revolves around, getting a straight or a flush. It's never fully thrown to the side as just like, a modded reskin of something. So it works really well, essentially is, I guess, the point that really needs to be conveyed. But your deck as you go on becomes this Frankensteinian monstrosity. It's also worth noting that you get X discards and X hands in a round, and it plays against things like small blind, big blind, so it's got these poker trappings, even though it's not poker. But for example, a legitimate strategy might, you want to chase a flush, and so you start the round with maybe 4 discards. You would discard aggressively, and just keep cycling, and hopefully you'll end up with your flush, and then you play it, and then that will combo with all your multipliers or whatever your deck's building around, And then hopefully that actually gets you over the score for the entire round. If not, you've still got a couple more hands. And if you play with a couple of spare hands, I don't know, let's say you've got 3 or 4 hands to make a 600 score and you do it in 1 or 2, the extra ones will flow over and give you currency that can then be used in the in-between round shop, which is, buying booster packs. And I haven't even touched on it, but like the art, the aesthetic, brilliant, wonderful. It has this really clean readability, but it also sits in a sort of cartoony space, as cartoony as you can make playing cards. And it's got a real personality, especially in things like Joker cards. That is one of the really big mechanics that's here. You sort of have this side deck area at the top of the gameplay space where you can have up to 5 Joker cards, and these are the things that really augment the gameplay style. They're basically artifacts. If you've played any of these sort of games before, significant run affecting augmenters. Be things like all cards count as face cards, or every time a card scores, add 4 points to its permanent score sort of thing. So like, you can juice cards up as you go. So there's all sorts of wild things, and then it plays from left to right, and so you're sort of combo chaining that you get into to varying degrees in this genre comes from the Joker cards more than anything. And that's probably the strongest thing and why it really appeals to me, because I think some of these games, in their attempt to differentiate themselves in this market, because the basics are all pretty much established, it's what you do different that will sell your game. I think they get a little bit lost, a little bit forest for the trees when it comes to setting up cool combos, and then you end up with games that get way too cerebral, where you end up sitting there for minutes at a time trying to think up the clever combo chain, and it sort of can lose the thread and become less streamlined, less simplistic. It doesn't have to be simple per se, but it has to be punchy and engaging, and I feel like this, the longer that you get someone melting their head trying to get the perfect combo, the longer you're sort of running out of goodwill in one of these games. Anyway, so like the actual playing of, look at my hand, what am I trying to do? Do I discard or do I play? Like, that's essentially the core loop. And then the sprinkling on top of that is the how do I collect these jokers, position them, and set up the combo chain. So I hope I'm making myself clear. It's less about trying to create a combo chain on every single hand, on every single round. It's more about between rounds, you do a bit of a health check on where your Joker lineup is, and then go on. And so it's much cleaner, and yet it still has that cerebral level, that higher level thinking of setting combo chains, but it's not on a hand-to-hand basis. I think that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is it does it better than probably most. It's a really cool game. I really, really like it. There's a good chance I'll review it, if only because I like having idle games that I can chip away at between things while things are exporting, or I want some downtime, maybe just listen to some Spotify and chip away at something. There are games that inhabit that space. I wouldn't necessarily say they're... Well, actually, maybe I will say they're more low energy. That's not to take away from the game, but it's not like I'm sweating my balls off playing Ready or Not super serious, almost like another job. And I think people understand that, and that's why things like Vampire Survivors are probably blown out. Because at the end of the day, not to get into a bloody rant lecture, is that not what games are for? It's cool that we can take them quite seriously and become very invested. But there's also something to be said about blowing off steam, mental catharsis and downtime. And this definitely sits there, and I am compelled to play more of it because I just really enjoy it. Like, as far as what I've got on offer at the moment, I'm kind of nearly done with Deep Rock Galactic in the background. That was filling the spot, and a bit of Hellcard as well. So I think Balatro is going to be the new one, which means I'll probably have to review it if I'm going to play it some more. Anyway, I don't want this to waffle on. You should check it out yourself if you are interested in these sort of games, if you're interested in parlor card games, and even if you're not, this actually might be the one that converts people. Super clean, super accessible, it gets complicated but not overwhelmingly so. Again, that's my greatest criticism, is a lot of games that enter into this arena in the attempt to push the needle become overwhelmingly obtuse. Not this one. This is clean. This is refreshingly clean. I hope it pops off. I feel like it probably will. Anyway, team, let me know what you reckon. Might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.